Welcome to Chapter 9, and we're going to discuss supporting mobile devices. Um, we discuss the various types of mobile devices, identify some significant features in some of the key mobile devices, and then we're going to talk about configuring wired and wireless connections on mobile devices, and how to synchronize and secure our content, as well as install and configure Internet of Things, IoT, Internet of Things devices, and troubleshoot some common problems with mobile devices. Uh, Mobile devices that you may have to support include smartphones, tablets, readers, GPS wearables, and virtual reality or alternate reality headsets. Uh, Here's an example of a VR device. Um, communicates through a wired connection, and it's not wireless, but it's a wired connection. The four most popular mobile operating systems are Android, iOS, Windows Mobile, and Chrome. Android is developed by Google and is based on Linux, and it is open source, which means everyone has access to the source code and can change or modify the code for their own use. Android uses dessert names for the releases, and you can see some of them listed here. And future releases will follow in an alphabetical order. I'm not sure what happens when they get to Z, but we'll find out. Android can be run on many devices, and this is showing a Nexus smartphone running Android with Oreo installed. Android supports Windows panes and 3D graphics. Android can use an embedded browser, manage a database, and connect to networks. 5 apps can be pinned to the favorites tray. Notifications provide information about apps. There's also a digital assistant that can respond to voice commands. The notifications shade includes quick access to the settings app. You can swipe down again to access quick settings on the notifications shade. So here, just showing your ability to get to the settings app. Google Play is the official source for apps, but apps can be added from anywhere. Android apps can be developed from any machine that is running the Android Studio, which includes the software developer kit and emulator. Android Studio is free and is also open source. This is one of the features why Android is as popular a model. It's totally open source. It allows for developers easy access. They don't require you to have a certain machine to develop from, and being open source allows manufacturers the ability to add the Android onto their phones, and so you have more versions of phones. Here's an example of the Play Store, so you can search for apps and music, books, movies, and other things that you can download and install onto your phone or other device running Android. iOS is based on the Mac OS. You have different versions, iPads, iPhones that run these. It is developed and owned by Apple, though, which is in contrast with the Android. Here's an example of iPhone 10 series, and it does not have a home button, whereas iPhone 8 had a home button. And so then you can access the app switcher and control center from any screen on the iPhone. iOS apps are only available through the App Store. ISO apps can only be created on a Mac. You must have a Mac in order to create an ISO app, which is completely different from Android. Remember, Android, you can create from a Mac, a Windows, or Linux, or any machine, probably even a Chromebook. As long as you can get the Android Studio to run, you can create an Android app. But for Apple, you must have a Mac in order to create an iOS app. And iOS devices must be activated by signing into the device using the Apple ID, and you have to download the apps from official sources only, unlike Android, where you can download from anywhere. So this is just showing us the Apple Store, App Store, how you can download new apps. Windows Mobile is related to Windows 10 and it has no desktop screen. Windows phones rely primarily on the start screen, and most Windows phones have 3 buttons below the screen. One to access the start screen, the other is a back button, and the third is used for search. And here's an example of a phone running Windows OS mobile. And so you can, like I said, the start button there in the middle, you search on the right, and the back button on the left. Just like Windows 10, the Action Center will show notifications, as well as allow for accessing the Settings app, which allows for customizing a Windows phone. And this just shows the Settings app. Windows mobile apps are limited when compared to Android or iOS availability. Apps are obtained through the Microsoft Store or from third parties via the browser. Chrome OS is integrated extensively with the Chrome browser, and many of the apps will open in the browser. Chromebooks are currently the only device with Chrome OS. Chromebooks are very similar to a laptop, having several external ports and very similar keyboard layout with only a few differences. Chrome OS is updated about every 6 weeks to help prevent malware and implement security. Here's an example of the Chrome keyboard with this certain special buttons like the next page, previous page, overview mode, and search. And this is just a Chrome OS desktop, just showing the various items that you could find. Looks very similar to just Windows 10 in a lot of ways. You have the app launcher at the bottom, you have a status tray on the bottom right. You can access Settings app from there. You can launch browsers, and then from the browser you can launch all kinds of Google features and apps. So it functions very similar to Windows, but is also very limited in that it runs most apps in a browser. Google uses 4 approaches to security sandboxing. Processes such as the browser have very limited access, so a failure or security hole in one is not likely to compromise the system, as the process or app does not have access to the OS. They also use a verified boot. They have power washing, which is a factory reset, and a very quick updates. Once again, they occur about every 6 weeks. So these are all 4 of the main approaches to security. Chrome apps often open in the browser and can be gotten from the Chrome Web Store, and newer models can even support Android apps downloaded through the Google Play Store. So we kind of hinted on this, but there's closed source versus open source app development. Closed source apps must be tested and approved. Apps can only use APIs, application programming interfaces, instead of direct access to the OS. Closed source apps tend to have higher quality apps, but centralized and controlled app purchasing, very limited in what can be done and how it can be done for app development. Open source can be obtained from any source. There's no assurance of quality, though, and the market is not as controlled and thus easy for others to join and compete. And since open source, there are many different versions, this can also create some incompatibilities because there's so many versions. Configuring network connections and how to update and back up data, content, and settings will be covered in this next section. Most mobile phones have a settings app where most settings that you need are able to be configured. Also refer to your phone's user guide if you need help. This is the Android setting app and the iOS setting app, and you can see the various options that you can configure. They differ between the apps, between the operating systems, but you can configure them nonetheless from the settings app. Most mobile devices have several antennas, Wi-Fi, GPS, Bluetooth, near-field communications, NFC, and cellular. You can usually enable and disable each antenna. Network configurations are usually found in the Settings app. On the Wi-Fi settings screen, you can manage your Wi-Fi connection. And this is just showing how on this phone here in the Settings app, it looks like it's on an iPhone because it's asking for an Apple ID. But they click on the Wi-Fi, and then now you can select the Wi-Fi network and connect. If your mobile plan allows you to, you can share your cellular internet connection and set up a hotspot or tethering. Tethering is most often when you use a USB cable to share the connection, and it is a hotspot when you use the Wi-Fi network to share the connection. There are several unique identifiers that exist on each mobile device, such as IMEI and IMSI and the ICCID. And these mainly work with your carrier, your phone carrier, but they help identify the phone and your phone plan and your settings. Sometimes you can move your service from one device to another by just moving the SIM card. If your carrier does not use a SIM card, you need to work with your provider to switch devices. There are times when you'll want to disable the cellular data or cellular roaming, especially like if you're traveling overseas, things like that. You may be in for a rude awakening when you get your bill if you don't. Then also on an airplane, you definitely need to be able to disable your cellular data and roaming. VPNs are a safe way to connect while using public hotspots, such as Starbucks or a restaurant or some place that offers free Wi-Fi, hotels. VPNs set up a secure tunnel between your device and a known trusted server. You typically need to pay for the service, but if you plan on regularly using your device on public hotspots, it is highly recommended. Using a VPN, all data transferred is encrypted. I do not recommend you doing anything important over a public Wi-Fi, but if you find you need to, I would recommend using a VPN to ensure that you are more secure, as you have no idea if you are truly connecting to the real public hotspot or a hacker's hotspot, and you could do a search for a Wi-Fi pineapple. It's about $100, and you can set up a rogue hotspot and make everybody believe they're connecting to Starbucks or something else. And in fact, they're connecting to your Wi-Fi pineapple, and then you can see all the data and traffic. Just knowing this and seeing this capability and how little it costs should encourage you to use a VPN over the public Wi-Fi, or at least never do anything important over public Wi-Fi. And this is configuring a VPN connection. You name it, you have the server address, you may need to have a login and password, and then you can do the PPP encryption or other advanced options depending on the VPN settings that you need set. Be sure to check what ports and slots are available on your device before buying any accessory. Wired connections can charge the device, download updates, upload data, backup data, and restore software data. And then, there's different types. The micro USBs, mini USBs, the newer USB-Cs, and then of course you have the lightning ports, lightning connectors for Apple. Your device may also provide a memory card slot, allowing for extra storage. And the next few slides show the various cables that can be used to connect to a mobile device. This displays a micro USB cable. Here is the mini USB cable. And finally, this is the USB-C cable. Wireless connections range includes Bluetooth, typically is about 10 meters or 30 feet. Infrared, typically 30 meters or 90 feet, but must have line of sight. And near field communications, NFC, has a very small distance of 10 centimeters. So you have to be fairly close, but not exactly on it either. But it's, 10 centimeters is not that big of a distance. The NFC is used for contactless credit card payments, and NFC tags can be embedded into just about anything and store information that can be read by the NFC enabled device. You can use email on your mobile device one of two ways. One, using the browser, or two, using email client. And then you'll need the various information to set up your email account and knowing which protocol, POP or IMAP, that you're using to read your email. But you'll have to get those settings from your provider, email provider, and most provide both, but it'd be your option usually. Syncing keeps multiple devices with the same set of data and content. However, it is not a backup. A backup is a copy of everything. If you delete some data while syncing, you would delete the data from all devices, but not touch the data in the backup. Thus, you could still restore the data from the backup, but it would be lost if all you were doing was syncing. And then there's various clouds that you can sync your data to, Google Storage or iCloud. There's various ways, and then there's other vendors that provide cloud storage. Microsoft has OneDrive and others. Apple, Google, and Microsoft provide cloud storage and ways to sync your apps to your devices. This is showing the access that you can get up to Google Apps Launcher. And this is iCloud, showing the storage available on there and what you want to be stored in the cloud. You can choose to have your photos, mail, or calendars, reminders, all that. And then you can sync to your desktop, by using the USB connection, or iTunes with iOS. You have automatic syncing options, third-party apps such as OneDrive from Microsoft, Dropbox, etc. And you can back up and sync apps with Android and then iCloud with iOS. So there are very, very numerous amounts of syncing and backup options for mobile devices. iTunes can sync or back up a mobile device with a Mac or a Windows computer. And you use synchronization apps to sync files to your Windows computer. And here's just showing that you can have iCloud, Google Drive, Dropbox, OneDrive, all on the same PC. So you can have all kinds of synchronizations and backups going on a PC. Sync and activity with handoff and continue on the PCs, right? So you got the Apple handoff. You can access in the settings menu, and then Microsoft Launcher or continue on PC allows you to be able to launch an app and then continue it on the PC. And this is just showing the various different versions, right? So A is to tap continue on the PC. B is the Microsoft Launcher has made subtle changes to the Android home screen, right? C is the launcher's all app screen is similar to the Windows Start screen. So there's options that you can do in setting that up. Syncing to an automobile, right? So most new cars offer the option to use Bluetooth to pair a smartphone or mobile device with the car's computers for easy access to your music, navigations, call, your address book, and you can update the OS. Updates to Android are automatically pushed to the device. Check for install updates on an iOS device. You must first be signed in to the device with your Apple ID. And then you go to the settings, Generals tab, and go to the software update. Backup and recovery, right? So you have several choices. You can do a file level backup, a partial image level backup, or a combination of file level and partial level backups. And then Android phones provide a way to back up to Google Drive, but then you can back up to computer, but it requires a third-party app. Backup recovery for iOS can be used using iTunes or iCloud. iCloud, is kind of an automated setup and is done automatically. iTunes is when you connect your device to the computer. It can back up via iTunes. And consider controlling access to your device and consider what apps you use to help protect your data. All right, so there, especially on an Android device where anybody can create an app, there's a little less control and rigor on it, so you need to be careful about what apps you do install on your device. And you need to do a little bit on iOS as well, but definitely on Android, and then definitely keep your phone with you and keep access to your device limited. And some methods that we can control the access is all these various locks, the screen, swipe, a pen, or fingerprint, face lock. These are all ways to limit access, control access to our device. And then here's just showing the options of what type of lock that you're trying to select on an Android. And then you got some smart lock exceptions on the second screen there that you can set up. Right, so screen lock options, you can restrict failed login attempts, right? So after so many failed logins, data can be erased. or you can block further attempts. I'd be careful about erasing the data unless you know for sure you've got backups. Full device encryption can encrypt all the data on the device, and then you can also require multi-factor authentication, which is more than one, so 2 or more forms of authentication, such as an authenticator application, and so you have to not only know your password or PIN, but you have to do something else or have something else in order to log in. And then you can secure data using some software, right? You need to make sure your OS gets updated. There's antivirus, anti-malware for your mobile devices. Download apps only from trusted sources. You can install firewalls and configure firewalls. You can have the Android and iOS locator application and remote wipe. You can remote wipe your device if it were lost or stolen. Right. So this is just showing where you can choose your apps to install from and which apps can access the internet. So you can control, you have a lot of granular control on what happens on your mobile device. And this is just an example of locating a lost Android device. And if you've got this enabled, you can locate your Android device, and then also if you have it enabled, you can erase it and wipe your phone if it were stolen. BYOD, or bring your own device, has been a big shakeup for corporate America. Trying to allow employees or students to allow and connect their own device to the corporate network was challenging. There was a lot of security that had to be worked through, and configurations that need to be done to allow a person's device onto the network. It does utilize security profiles to restrict how a user can access, create, and edit the organization's resources. And in some cases, it segments it off from the personal use, and so there's like a carved out space for the organization, and you can only access it through the organization's apps while connected on the organization's network. There's a lot of different ways and configurations that can happen. And then let's see here, the configuration requirements can be placed on the device, and even corporate-owned devices. And part of the requirements will likely include installation of a remote backup application, so everything gets backed up that is company-owned. Some common symptoms for malware might be at work. You could see unauthorized use, dropped phones, a weak signal, loud, power drain, definitely. And then if you see any Bluetooth or Wi-Fi connections made that you didn't make, these are all signs. And definitely unauthorized use of the camera or microphone. These can all be signals of malware. General steps for removing malware. Well, identify the app and uninstall it. Update your OS, or you may, last resort, perform a factory reset. Always keep the OS update. If you as current as you can, that helps eliminate a lot of issues. And then if in an organization, you need to educate users about the importance of privacy settings. Don't open email attachments or download share files from untrusted sources. And then also installing an anti-malware app, an antivirus app is recommended. Internet of Things, IoT, devices connected to the internet for a specific purchase, such as a smart thermostat, so you can control your thermostat at home or office over the internet. But there's other things, like your fridge. There's smart fridges that connect to the internet and order products when it's low in the fridge. So we'll also learn about wireless technologies used by the Internet of Things and how to set up a smart network. All right, so besides Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, we have Z-Wave and Zigbee. They are two other well-known wireless technologies that are commonly used for smart devices, smart networks, Internet of Things. They can be used for smart locks, smart light bulbs, and other devices. The Z-Wave operates at 900 megahertz, where the Zigbee operates at 2.4 gigahertz and the 900 megahertz bands. These require less power than Wi-Fi, and the Zigbee has a range of about 20 meters inside. They are not compatible with each other, but you can connect into a mesh network, so they can you can have multiple devices of each, one or the other, right? But not mixed. I mean, you can, but they won't talk to each other. And so they're about equal as far as competing. And definitely using the 900 megahertz bands, they're less likely to interfere with your regular Wi-Fi users, which also can operate at 2.4. Although nowadays more often we operate at the 5 gigahertz band and then soon the 6 gigahertz band. Another standard used by the Internet of Things is the RFID, or radio frequency identifications. This is how a lot of companies can take automatic inventory of their products and things like that, know where it's located with these RFID tags. For most smart homes, you'll need some device with internet access. Ideally a smartphone or tablet makes it easy to run the smart home, and then you'll have to have something, right, that you can control. The light bulbs, thermostats, cameras, doors, locks, television, sound systems, etc. And then to be considered an Internet of Things, that you must be able to control them over the internet. So you can control them from your office. You control your home thermostat from your office, as an example, or your office thermostat from home. IoT devices connect to form a smart home network and may use a variety of wireless technologies. And here it's showing you can use Zigbee to Wi-Fi, Bluetooth to Wi-Fi, and then also Wi-Fi itself to enable your smart home network. You can enhance your smart home with smart speakers. There's several. Alexa, Google, Siri. They're digital assistants. It's voice activated. You can have a controller hub and control smart devices that use different manufacturers' apps and different wireless technologies. Here's an example of a Google Home smart speaker. Mobile devices contain few field replaceable units, which means they're disposable. You can't repair them usually. There's nothing, you can't buy parts. One, because the cost of replacement, including parts and labor, will generally exceed the value of a new device. But many of the problems with a device you can troubleshoot using tools within the OS, and so you have a lot of information out on the web for fixing most common issues. Troubleshooting, right? So close, uninstall, or reinstall apps, restart the device, update, repair, or reinstall the OS. Start over by resetting to factory reset. That's like your last resort because you'll lose all your data and your settings. So that's definitely a last resort, but it is an option. And then you have different ways to restart or reboot, and it will depend on your device. Update, repair, restore. You'll want to back up your content and settings, update the OS, and then once again, it's just going to depend on your device and what your options are. You can restart into safe mode and buy third-party apps. Well, third-party apps won't load in safe mode. Reset screen on an iPhone. So here's your options to reset. You can use recovery mode with iTunes to reinstall iOS on an iOS device. Factory resets erases all data and settings, so make sure you have a backup before you perform the reset or you're going to lose everything. Common problems and solutions, right? Short battery life, disable wireless connections and close apps when you're not using them. And then you may need to look at replacing the battery. Inaccurate touch screen, you might need to remove the protective cover. Check accessibility settings in the setting apps, and that's set accordingly for you and your needs. Touch screen not responsive, right? Clean the screen. Do not use touchscreen when your hands are wet. Restart the device. A lot of times restarting a device will fix a lot of issues. Remove the plastic sheet or film protecting the screen, and try uninstalling or any recently installed third-party apps. No sound or distorted sound from the speakers. Check your volume setting and check and see if Bluetooth is on. Dim display, adjust the brightness. Bluetooth connectivity, delete any unknown devices. Wi-Fi, make sure the access point and router are working, and try to disconnect, reconnect. And then signal drop, weak signal, you might try updating the device's firmware. That might resolve it. GPS not functioning, check that location service settings is on in the settings app. Unable to decrypt email, you may need to generate a new public key and private key and distribute the new public key to those who send you encrypted email. Apps not loading, make sure you have enough space. Uninstall unused apps and delete unnecessary files. Considering downloading an app to clean up storage, I'd rather do it manually, but yeah, there are some apps that can help you with that. App log errors. Some apps maintain logs of errors, right? And so it might help you troubleshoot. This is just showing the managing the location services, and you can fine-tune which apps have access to your location. You can find out how much storage is being used and make suggestions to how to free up some storage. A frozen system, your battery may be low. Try recharging it for at least an hour and see if that helps. System lockout, wait for our timers to count down and reset so that you can try again. For Android devices, if the passcode or screen swipe doesn't work, enter your Google account and password associated with the device. You can go to accounts.google.com for other methods. Overheating, power off the device till it cools down. Don't use the device too long in direct sunlight or leave it out in sunlight because it will overheat. And that concludes our Chapter 9, Mobile Devices.